In this video, we're going to be putting the rules together that we've learned in previous modules. And they've given us a reminder of the rules that we've learned. And in one, they want us to simplify each expression using the above rules and order of operations. In A, we have negative 3/10 times x to the fifth times x times 5x cubed divided by 6. And the first thing it wants us to do is rewrite the problem so factors are grouped together. So I'm going to have negative 3/10 times 5/6 times x to the fifth times x cubed. And now they want us to multiply the numbers and apply the product rule. So we're going to have negative 3/10 times 5/6 is equal to negative 15 over 60. And now we have x to the fifth times x cubed. And we're going to use the product rule, and we're going to add the exponents. So we have a base of x, and then we have 5 plus 1 is 6, plus 3 is 9. And negative 15 over 60 could be simplified to negative 1/4 x to the ninth. And we could also write this as negative x to the ninth over 4. In B, we have x to the fourth times x cubed divided by y to the fifth, y to the sixth, z squared, all cubed. And the first thing we want us to do is simplify the quantity in the parentheses. And we have x to the fourth times x cubed is going to be x to the seventh divided by y to the fifth times y to the sixth is equal to y to the 11th times z squared, and all of this cubed. And now they want us to apply the power rule for the quotient. So we're going to have x to the seventh cubed divided by y to the 11th cubed times z squared cubed. And this is equal to x to the 21st power divided by y to the 33rd power and z to the 6th power. In C, we have negative 6 times x squared times y cubed divided by z to the fourth, all squared, times x cubed y to the seventh divided by 4z to the 10th. And the first thing it wants us to do is apply the power rule for a quotient to the first factor. So we're going to square everything in the parentheses, and we have negative 6 squared is equal to 36. X squared is equal to x to the fourth, and y cubed squared is equal to y to the sixth, divided by, we have z to the fourth squared is z to the eighth, times x cubed y to the seventh, divided by 4z to the 10th. And now it wants us to apply the product rule and simplify. Now I'm going to write this with all my factors grouped together that are the same. So I'm going to have 36 times x to the fourth times x cubed times y to the sixth times y to the seventh divided by 4 z to the eighth and z to the 10th. And this is equal to 36 over 4 can be reduced to 9 over 1, so I have a 9 in the numerator. And then I have x to the fourth times x cubed is x to the seventh. And y to the sixth times y to the seventh is y to the 13th. Divided by, we've already simplified the 4. And now we have z to the 8th times z to the 10th is z to the 18th power. And in D, we have x squared times y to the fourth times y cubed times z, all squared, times negative x cubed times x to the fourth times y to the seventh times z to the 10th, all cubed. And the first thing it wants us to do is apply the product rule inside the parentheses. And we have x squared, and we have y to the 4th times y cubed, and that will give us y to the 7th. And then we have z, 1 factor of z, and all of this squared times we have negative x cubed and x to the 4th, and that's going to give us a negative x to the 7th, and y to the 7th, and z to the 10th, all cubed. And now it wants us to apply the power rule for a product to each factor. So now we have x squared squared gives us x to the 4th. Y to the 7th squared is y to the 14th. Z squared times, and now we have this negative value, and this negative value can be treated like -1, and -1 cubed is still negative. So we're going to have -1, and then we have x to the 7th cubed is x to the 21st power, and y to the 7th cubed is y to the 21st power, and z to the 10th cubed is z to the 30th. And now it wants us to rewrite the problem so factors are grouped together. So we have -1 times x to the 4th times x to the 21st times y to the 14th times y to the 21st times z squared times z to the 30th. Once we apply the product rule, this will be equal to -1, which we're going to write as just a negative, and now we have x to the 4th times x to the 21st is x to the 25th power, and then y to the 14th times y to the 21st is y to the 35th power, and we have z squared times z to the 30th is z to the 32nd power. And that's our video on putting the rules together, part 1.